Hi, and welcome to the Guest List podcast. I'm your host, Steve Guest. Really excited to have today's guest on with us. Somebody that inspired me going back probably 3 or 4 years. And we've kept in touch ever since. So I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to introduce this person, just read through their bio before we get chatting. So today's guest is Jamie York. Jamie York is a property investor, speaker and entrepreneur. He's the co-owner of Aspire Property Group, which includes a number of property-based companies, including Sell BMV, one of the largest deal sourcing companies in the UK. Jamie grew up in Kent and after some success in trading, purchased his first property at 19 years old with his now business partner, Dan Buchan. With little property experience, his property purchase wasn't smooth sailing and Jamie quickly realised he needed to get educated. After growing his property knowledge, Jamie then moved to Yorkshire and set up a rent-to-rent company, selling the company after about 4 years and then forming Aspire Property Group, which he has grown over the past 10 years to what it is today. A millionaire at the age of 24, Jamie has grown his property portfolio and continues to invest and now trains others to enable them to have a firm understanding, not only of business and property, but also of the mindset that goes alongside being an entrepreneur. Jamie, welcome.
Nice, mate. Look, well read. Good to be on, mate. Really excited for this interview and hopefully adding some value to you and your listeners. So yeah, ready to jump in.
You definitely will. I think back to, I started my property journey 2016, I think it was. And I first saw you talk. And if I'm honest, out of all the speakers that were at the event, you were the one that kind of grabbed my attention. I'm not sure what it was. I don't know whether it was the story, the setup and how you were, but there was something about you that is just, I found really engaging. And I think you were one of the ones that really pushed me to take that first jump into property that could be really scary. And all you see is risk, I think, at the start, don't you?
Yeah. I appreciate that, mate. I'm not sure if it's a genuine compliment or you've said that to everyone that comes on your podcast, but I'll have to listen back, won't I, to the other speakers.
Yeah, I know it is very genuine. I think you'd started off as a recruitment consultant as well, so there was almost that link where you start to attach yourself, don't you, to certain stories and you people that you find inspirational. You kind of want to follow that path. Okay, so we've mentioned there in the bio about the mindset of being an entrepreneur. I mean, give me a bit of an overview as to you as an individual. What is it that inspires you? What gets you going?
You know, for me, it's the challenge of it. And I know that's such a blasé thing to say, but actually when you start making money, when you start developing yourself out, and especially when you get some passive income as well, that looks after all of your financial needs, that's when you really, you truly work out whether you're a businessman or businesswoman or an entrepreneur. And I think that's a big divide for me, is that because, you know, if you're a business person, you know, and it's not just that entrepreneurial spirit, then there's no need to take on more. There's no need to stress yourself out, because let's face it, being an entrepreneur is stressful as hell. You know, there's loads, and we were chatting before, like about this year, where it's massive growth, people leaving, people trying to set up on their own, people, you know, all of the usual crap that you put up with as an entrepreneur and a business owner. So I think being an entrepreneur is linked to embracing that challenge, and it's almost that the challenge is your oxygen in life, almost like you genuinely can't live without it. And for me, I've really recognized some behaviors in myself that, you know, days off, like unless they are planned days off and I have something, I literally shut down. I just don't, like, I'm a fish out of water. You'll literally see me there. It's like, I don't know what to do. And I really don't. It's because actually this is my life. So people talk about work-life balance. Absolute bullshit. It's like, I don't buy into it at all. I think about a blend in life, you know, like you've got to enjoy yourself. And so for me, I like going down the pub like everyone else, you know, having a couple of drinks. But my idea of a fun couple of drinks is going to the pub with people that want to talk shop, talk about money, talk about building business, talk about strategy, talk about the problems, the solutions, the things like that. And that for me is the way my world goes round. And so I have no interest in holidays where I switch off for a few weeks, because there's no such thing for me. It's just like, no, like I wake up and I'm thinking about something that's growth related. And if it's not my problems, it's somebody else's problems and how I can help overcome them. And for me, I just live and breathe that. And I'm genuinely passionate about it. And I love problems. I absolutely love problems. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's a mindset shift in itself. At the start, problems are bad, right? I don't want problems. I just want easy life. It's like, do you? Because an easy life sounds pretty shit. Like, you know, like a relationship with no sort of passion. And you're going to have arguments every now and then. But if you have a relationship with nothing, no passion, no engagement like that, it's going to get boring after a while. And it's the same with life. So for me, I think business owners and entrepreneurs are solutions providers. So if you can go out there and positively seek problems, I'm not talking about people with like these horrible habits and things like that, where it's quite degrading and negative problems that they're coming up against, but genuinely positive engagement with these problems with a solution focus to that. I think that for me is a real mindset of an entrepreneur and somebody that's going to take over and dominate in their industry.
I mean, you've summed up so many things there. I think I've followed you on social media for a long time. We've spoken on and off on occasion, haven't we? Mm-hmm. And you are constant. You are they say 110% motivated and everything else. You are beyond that and some, because you are just at it all the time. How do you kind of stick with that? I know you talked about passion, but you must have days where you sit there and you just think, I've lost my mojo, or I'm not quite with it, or you're not, I don't know, your motivation wanes, or you think, is this all worth it? How do you get past that?
At least monthly, if not weekly. Like, no, be serious. Like this morning I woke up and I was meeting somebody at 6:30 for a swim. And I was just like, fuck that. Like, I've just got no time for it. I'm knackered. It was freezing cold where I am this morning. And you know, when you move to a different part of your bed and you've got that nice crisp cold and it's like, I'll just 5 more minutes, press snooze, and it goes off and you feel like throwing your phone out of the window. I'm human. Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing that people need to connect themselves with, is we are human. Even like the absolute machines that need to grease themselves up with a bit of WD-40 every now and then, right? And we're no different. You know, I am human. I fuck up all the time. I get emotional. I cry. I hate life sometimes. You know, wake up, is this all worth it? Like this year, for example, especially with some of the team on furlough coming in place, it's one of the first times I've genuinely felt jealous of my staff. And it's like, from a point of view where it's like, oh man, like you could literally do nothing and you're still good.
Yeah, you say that, Jamie, but you don't really mean it.
No,
there's no way. Yeah, there's no way.
No, of course I don't. But in that moment, I mean, there's Jesus, who would hire me, right? But like I couldn't put up with me. But the thing is, like, you have to accept that you are human. You have to accept those breaks. So when you say I'm 110%, actually, I have high intention around things. Okay, so what I would say is I'm present in the moment. So now there's things going on around me. You know, there's somebody going in and out of the kitchen, grabbing coffees. I can hear some conversations in the background. There's stuff going on there. There's my phone here, but my phone is on silent and it's on sleep mode. So I shouldn't get anything through. Okay. And the reason for that is actually I can be here. I can be committed to this moment in time. And even if there is a fire next to me, it doesn't bother me. Like literally, if I saw a fire there, at worst, I'd look at it and carry on, because I'm focused here. And I know there's people in the room that can deal with that shit. And then after, I can go out and go, what the fuck happened there? You know, like what problems coming up? And so to the outside world, it might seem that I'm waking up at 3 a.m, going to sleep at 2 a.m, but I'm getting my 8 hours. I work out at least once a day. I get my 10,000 steps in. I eat healthily. And I might have a day off twice a year, you know. That is one thing. I'm not very good with days off because I don't really switch off. So it's kind of like a blended life. Like my Monday's not any different to my Sundays, you know, they blend. One practical thing that I think really works is something that I call the 1-3-5 method. And it's something I put together with a scrape of a few different things. And the idea is every single day, and I mean every day, Monday to Sunday, and maybe not Christmas Day, but, you know, pretty much every day, one thing I absolutely must do, 3 things I really should get done, and 5 things that I could do. Now, what we tend to do in life is those 5 things you could do. It's not to say they're not high value, but they're high value. You know, things like sending an email out to your list. If you're a solo entrepreneur or you're in your first employee, you know, you're wearing many hats. That is a high value thing to do. Is it higher value than getting on that call to save a close? You know, the deals that are going to fall out of bed. Everyone hates calling them. Even though that's worth a lot of money, you've already put the effort in to get that sale. You've already done it, you know, in recruitment. You've already convinced the candidate that they're right. You know, you've already convinced this is the right candidate. They're towards the end of their probation, you know, whatever it is. And it's like, you don't want to do that. But what most people do is the 5 things that they could do, because it's positive procrastination. Great thing about watching Netflix is, you know, you're fucking around, right? You know, you're procrastinating. Whereas when you're sending emails and replying to emails, you convince yourself it's emails, they've got to get answered. No, they don't. Nobody cares about emails. No email was ever urgent. They'd ring you, right? Nobody, it's like saying sending pigeon post. Yeah, it's really important. I answer that right now. Really? Is it? And so the 1-3-5 method, 1 thing I must do, 3 things I should do, and 5 things I could do. It allows me, when I'm on point, to be an absolute machine. And I mean, I might get through like 3-4 cycles of that a day. And if you can mix that in with Pomodoro, okay, so 25 minutes on, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes on, half an hour break. That tends to be what I do. And you can do 4 or 5 rounds of that. You will do in a day what you usually get done in a week or 2. Like, it is that powerful. It's incredible. But on those days that I screw up, that I feel really shit, that I wake up, which genuinely will be a couple of times a month. So I just can't be bothered. I'm knackered. Couldn't sleep last night, you know, because your thoughts are running and all of that. I just want to shut off. I don't give a shit. I am doing at least that 1 thing I must do. And by the way, that's not the longest task. It's the most important, highest value, the urgent and important task, the highest one. It might take me half an hour to do, right? It might take me 3 hours to do. It doesn't matter. I get up and I get it done, no matter what. And the reason I like doing that is, I'd say 80% of the time on those crap days, once I've got out of bed, you know, you've done your morning shit, shave, shower, whatever, and you've done that 1 task that is really high value, I'd say 80% of the time, I'm like, let's do this. Let's go, baby. Like, I've had my coffee now. I'm raring to go. I'm dominate. And you do, because and I'm a bit of an early bird, you know, sort of usually between 4:30, 5:30 nowadays. And so that task is finished sometimes at like 7 in the morning, and people are still sleeping. And I've just beaten the sun up. I've dominated a task, and these fuckers aren't even awake yet. I am winning. Why would I let that win go 80% of the time? 20% of the time, I get back into bed and I'm not having it. I do, you know, and I just get back into bed. I'll chill out, eat shit all day, watch Netflix, whatever I want to do. But I still did 1 genuinely high value task towards my growth. And if you've ever looked into the 1% rule, you know, people look at, like, obsessed with this huge growth. Actually, a marathon is only a series of steps. That's all it is. Okay. It's only when you put this time barrier on it, and only when you say you need to run it, and you've got this competition, that it becomes a lot harder. But marathon's a piece of piss. If you think about the basics of it, same as business, same as life, same as growth, same as happiness, same as everything. It's just 1 step forward. And so my absolute minimum that I will allow myself on a day is 1 tiny step forward. As long as I've done that, I'm progressing. And so I never, ever, ever take a step back. There are no days wasted, not 1 in the year, because an inch is an inch, and each inch adds up.
That's a great a great way of putting things. I'm a firm believer of the 1%. Used to buy all the consultants, the compound effect by Darren Hardy, and the thought process of making that one extra sales call or pushing for that one extra interview, the impact over a year is so important. But people always, they want to rush to the finish line, or they want to get something that is the game changer or that massive move that makes them stand out. But actually, if you can be, I suppose I've made a career out of being that quiet, unassuming consultant at the back of the room that doesn't ding the bell when he makes a placement because the job isn't done yet. I want to be the person that creeps up behind, so to speak. Not in a weird way. Yeah.
And whatever you're into, mate. But no, you're right. There's a YouTuber, and I started looking into YouTube a bit more. And there's this guy called Matt Diavella on there. He's massive. He's all about mindset and habits and stuff like that. But he's got like 3 million subscribers. He's just released a YouTube course, so I bought it and I listened to it. And his whole thing is slow growth. So he said his whole brand is called the Slow Growth Academy. And there was one thing that really connected with me. He said, "Do you know people would be far more successful and so much more happy if they changed the 3-week mindset into a 3-year mindset?" And it's this whole thing where actually, if you're trying to get rich quick, you can guarantee making someone else rich, okay, and probably making yourself poor in the meantime. You know, it's like these people, like obviously, I mean, they're training them. The amount of shit a lot of trainers spew, like you can quit your job next month. It's like, piss off. No, you can't. Yeah. And it's like, it's so unlikely, that reality. But actually, if you came into this game and you said, okay, what are my 3-year goals? You can suddenly achieve a lot more. So I say to people, you know, if you had a 5-year target to be a millionaire, I'd believe that a lot more than somebody that said, I want to make 50 grand in my first 6 months. Yeah. And they go, what do you mean? Surely 50 grand's a piece of piss. And I was like, no, it's not. It's like your first 50 grand is so hard in business. It's so difficult. It's the hardest money I think you'll ever make, your first 50 grand. And once you break past that, it's just exponential. It's like now, if you look at any curve, YouTube curve growth, my financial net worth growth, like now my net worth can go up 100K a month. And it's like, fucking hell, that's amazing, Jamie. It's like, well, yeah, it's taken me 10 years to get to that of hard growth. Yet everyone, you ask every single person you know, would you put in 10 years to get to that point? Oh yeah, absolutely. No worries. Who does? Who does? And that's the thing. It's turning up every day consistently and just those small steps. So, that was a longer answer than I thought, but that was good.
It's that concept of instant gratification, isn't it? And the overnight success. Nobody sees the fact that you are working 7 days a week, 363 days a year if you're having your 2 days off to get to where you are now 10 years on.
That's it, yeah. And I don't know if it's a generational thing or it's everybody, but it seems to be a lot more in my generation. People just, and is it Generation Z after me? I don't know. Yeah. But like millennials, I know they just expect everything like that. Obviously, I know I'm a millennial as well, but it's like, it's
yeah, crazy. But you do stand out.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit weird. But yeah, it's you don't deserve anything. Like there's nothing you have that you deserve. You've earned it. And so, you know, and that goes for, there are exceptions, you know. I'm not talking about some shit that was complete, like my dad died when I was younger. I'm not saying I deserve that. You know, I don't mean that. I mean, with your place in life, if you're poor right now, you probably deserve it. If you're rich right now and you didn't inherit it or you didn't win the lottery, you've earned it. And so I would never sympathize or feel bad for somebody that's poor. And if you're rich, you should never feel bad about it because it's bloody predictable. It's predictable. What are you doing on a daily basis? What are you putting in your mind? What are you putting in your body? And who are you surrounding yourself with? And if you can look at those 3 factors around, it's probably a dictator to the outcome of who you are right now, 100%.
Yeah. And this concept's there. I remember a few years ago, I had put forward a tender that needed to be done. I was relying on somebody else to complete the tender, and they didn't do it. We missed the deadline. We didn't win the tender because it wasn't in on time, and I lost my rag and went into the director, stormed in, slamming the door open. This is ridiculous. This person hasn't filled out the tender, and the director said, "Well, that's your fault. It's your client, it's your tender. Why haven't you managed it better? Why didn't you manage the process? It's 100% your fault. Whilst I got a good tearing down, and I did deserve it because I didn't manage it properly. But I think from that day, that thought process of it's 100% my fault, good and bad, I sink and swim by the decisions I make. Yes, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not frightened by them, but I can stand by it and say I made that decision because of X. And I think quite a lot of the time we very much live in a blame culture where we'll always say it's someone else's fault for not achieving. It's someone else's fault because I didn't get picked because of X.
Yeah.
And I think taking responsibility and saying, am I going to make this happen and work?
Yeah.
Is quite often lost on a lot of people.
It is, yeah. It's the thing is words. Words are so powerful. You know, what's the difference between who's taking blame for this and who's accountable to this? You know, they're very similar things. What makes somebody influential and what makes somebody manipulative? Very close things, very, very similar things, just a certain different tonality and insinuation behind it. But, you know, I think it's so important ultimately to every project. Who's accountable to this? Well, as a business owner, you're accountable to everything. So if a staff member does anything that you really don't like, it's your fault. Okay, because you allowed that to happen. You allowed that to be okay within your company. You allowed that to be the standard that's met there. And so, yeah, it's a trickle down. It's a trickle down impact for sure.
You're a very successful person, and obviously from the outside looking in and talking to you and knowing you a little bit, you work to the extreme, and you've quite openly said that. What is it that drives you? What is it? Just a trait that you have, and it's something that, I don't know, pushes you on? Was there a catalyst that one day you woke up and said, "This is where I want to be. This is what I'm going to do"?
I think you know, it goes back to that age-old argument, is it nature versus nurture? So if you look at my nurture, i.e. the environment I was in, so there's probably some pretty predictable moments in my life. So I had the fact that I was a relatively bright kid, did the 11 plus, passed it, got into Dartford Grammar down south, which is a very good school. I think it was third in the country at that point. And it was surrounded by a lot of people that were in that school had gone to private school. So wealthy families before I was not one of them. And they had money behind them, a very different life. And I grew up in Dartford in Temple Hill, which people know Dartford, in Temple Hill in particular, it's a bit rough. And I never felt poor at all, because I was happy with what I got. But suddenly I saw a different level of life. And, you know, little things like people talking about their yearly ski trip. And I was just like, that is so posh. Like, for me, we went to Haven Holiday Park, and that was sick, right? That was brilliant. I still think that's amazing. They were some of the best times of my life. But it's like very different life. And so I realized that money didn't, like, and I went around people's houses, you know, met their parents, and we had a lot of arguments in my family, like a lot of arguments. And most of them were around money. And so I don't think money makes you happy, but I think the absence of money can certainly cause a lot of pain and strife that's just not needed. So I had that environment. And then, like, as we got older, kids were going to, like, see wicked holidays and stuff like that. And then my dad passed away when I was 13. And I think that was quite a pivotal moment, because I was 13, about to turn 14. He died in September. My birthday was in November. And he was 38 years old, which is 9 years older than I am now, right? It's just way too young. Like, even saying that out loud, it's like, geez, he was young. And he gave me a real appreciation. And so this is going to sound really dark, but I don't mean it in a negative way. I had it in my head, okay, so if I die at 38, okay, and then I can't remember where this line is from, but I remember hearing it around that time. It was like, everybody dies, but not many truly live. And I thought, okay, if I do die at 38, that would be shit. And I don't want that to happen. But if I do, have I lived? And so I really try not to waste time, because whilst I'm trying to be patient, I'm definitely not patient. I try to be patient. also driven, and I realized there's any number of things that can happen from, my dad, it was cancer. It could be I walk out in front of the bus, and I know this is a bit morose, but what I guess I'm saying is when you really embrace the fragility of life, and how quickly it can be taken away from you, it gives you an appreciation. And I was unfortunate and fortunate enough that that happened to me at a young age. See, what normally happens is everyone has this moment, there will be somebody in somebody's life that is close to them that will pass away, and it will get them thinking, and it will get them reflecting, and it will go, wow, life is short. I just saw them last week. They were great. Could be a friend, family, mum, dad, whatever it is. And it's shit that it takes something so negative to have such a positive impact in my life. So that's why I said it was unfortunate. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd give everything to have my dad back for a day, right? But it really set me on that path. So that's the sort of environment, I guess. And then the nature part of this is I've always been driven, always been a bit of a hustler, always tried working things out. I've always been pretty good with my hands. I've always been never the brightest, but bright enough to sort of, I always say smart enough to get in action, smart enough not to stop, but not smart enough to stop myself. And that's what I see with a lot of smart people is they overthink a lot. The intelligent ones that are really intelligent, they start questioning why it's so easy. So they make it more complicated for themselves, I think. So yeah, I am driven. I am turn up. I love money. I do. I don't see money as negative at all. I think negative is something that accelerates who you are. And it's a vehicle. Okay. And what is it? You could say it's like, if you're a philanthropist and you're a multi-millionaire, then you can give away. If you're a prick, then you're going to be more of a prick. If you're a killer, you'll kill more people, and it's like money doesn't do anything. People say money changes people. It doesn't. It reveals you. It reveals who you are. So for me, I am definitely driven by money. I also want to make meaningful change. And maybe this is my ego, because, every selfless act is selfish. Like by the time I die, whenever that is, 38, 58, 98, whatever it is, I want to have impacted something. So I'm remembered for change. And I'm not sure what shape that will take. I'm doing a lot of charity work right now with kids in poverty in Leeds and kids in Africa as well, with schooling and stuff like that. And I'm really starting to get more and more engaged in that because I'm enjoying it. But who knows what it is. But I certainly think the environment behind me has shaped me somewhat at a young age. But I was always driven. It was always part of me. So like, even when I was broke and wearing ankle swingers at school, if you said to me, you're going to be a millionaire. Yeah. Like even then with my ankle swingers, I remember it was like, yeah, I'm going to be a millionaire one day.
Yeah.
And I'm not in a smug way. Like, even though it sounds smug, I don't mean it in that way. It was just like, yeah, I'm going to, because I would never give up, ever. Even in like there were points when we were like sleeping in the office and stuff like that. It happens. It's like, I'd never, ever, 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 ever give up, ever.
But for me, it's such a good, humble and genuine story when you're willing to do things, even like sacrificing a night to sleep in the office, because the belief in where you're heading is worth everything that's around you, and you're willing to do that. I think certainly the problems, we take recruitment, for instance. I've been in recruitment 15 years, and the average lifespan of a recruitment consultant is 6 months across pretty much any sector and industry. And yes, I get the fact it's difficult and there's lots of KPIs, internal, external. You're dealing with people who can let you down at the best moments and the worst moments. And it's tough psychologically and from a sales and everything else perspective. But the willingness to kind of go at it and have that continued belief is a rarity in a lot of people.
The thing is, though, like the great thing about sales, and I love selling, I love it. And I also see a sales role as close to owning a business as you can get. because as a salesperson, you kind of own your position. You know, you're a mini business within yourself. And I love that responsibility. I've always loved that pressure, because the thing that pissed me off with a lot of salary positions, you know, so we've got some girls and guys that work for me on a salary basis, and I'd hate to be in that, but only because of my personality. In that, I don't like the idea that you can get such better results in a position, and you'll get pay rises and bonuses, stuff like that, but it's not like you absolutely belt it for a month and you make another couple of grand. It doesn't work like that ever. And it's no job you do that. Whereas in sales, if you want to stay, and like you said, that extra phone call, the extra interview, over time, that's going to pay you tens of thousands. And the great thing as a business owner is it's exponential. So if you give it your all and you throw yourself at it continuously in the right direction with the right education, the support mechanisms and stuff, and I'm big on that support mechanism, you will be successful and you will be paid and rewarded very well. In the same way that if you don't and you're flaky, you'll lose it all. You know,
you get found out, don't you?
You get found out real quick, real quick. Yeah. So for me, I've loved that pressure, but also it's really important. And this is different. You need to understand if you are a number one or you're a number two. So Dan, my business partner, and this isn't like an offensive thing. It's not bad, or you might want to call it A or A and B if it's like slightly, you know, whatever people's egos. But Dan's like really humble, and he says, I know I'm number two. And he was like, I've got no interest in being number one. And it's like, look, if you're going to go out and attack and dominate your space, you're a spear, okay? You need to know whether you're the handle or the spearhead, okay? Both are integral to going out and dominating your space. If you're not a spearhead, don't pretend you are, okay? Because you'll wear it down. And like, so for me, an important thing being that spearhead and being the number one in the business is, no matter how I'm feeling, I need to G the team up. I need them to be excited. I need to go in on those days where I just want to get back in bed going, not quite like that, but you know, but let's do that.
Yeah. Well, I know you, and I've met Dan, and I've spoken with Dan a number of times, and you are two separate characters.
Yeah.
You are separate, but at the same time, you complement each other so well. And that's the beauty of a business relationship. If you were two identical people, you would be banging heads with each other every day.
Well, it's really interesting, our personalities, because I'm the salesperson, the marketer, a little bit leery, I love chatting with people, all of that. People often predict my character incorrectly. And the same with Dan. So I'm a really geeky person. And I'm also one of these people that like putting my headphones on and just being on my own for hours at a time. And so people never expect that from me. They're like, oh yeah, you're a massive extrovert, aren't you, Jamie? And I'm like, no. No, I'm not. And it's like, actually, I can't remember what the word is. There's extrovert, introvert, and then there's a blend. I can't remember if you know the word, tell me. But it's like, that's what I would say is that actually, I love being around people, but I also just like being on my own sometimes. So I do. So sometimes I'll book like a long weekend just to work, but just to put my headphones on and chill for the weekend, work on my own. Yeah. Because you know you need to get your fuel from different places for sure.
Yeah,
but
having space is good as well. Yeah. Okay, so a big question for me. So the life of any entrepreneur, you are going to have hit failures, whether it's on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Has there been any kind of particular huge failure or catastrophic failure where something's happened and you think, oh, that's a bit of either a showstopper or it's diverted you into a different direction where you've come up with a bigger solution?
Do you know, there's no huge oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But probably two key events over the last year or so. Number one, obviously COVID. You know, so the two industries that I'm in, number one, education, face-to-face education, events to 200 people. And obviously you've been to a couple of them, right? And that's a pretty big one. And a property company. pretty foundational stuff. And you couldn't get, like, plaster was like, everyone was calling it pink cocaine. It was ridiculous trying to get, you couldn't get hold of it. And so two big industries that involved face-to-face, and suddenly we had to think on our feet, because they for a good few months, if you remember the first lockdown, it was proper lockdown in the UK, so no viewings, anything like that. So suddenly we had to think on our feet. So it provided a new solution. So we got these 360 cameras, Ricoh tours and things like that, and we post them to the vendor with a video on how to use it. And so it's like a video, it spins round. So it's like you're walking in the property. And then we get that, upload it, and send it off to our investors. And they would buy properties off the back of that. Now we're selling to people in Hong Kong, Singapore, all of that, off of the back of these tours. Because they're just like, well, it's not the same, you can't smell it or touch it and all that. But it's as close as you get. So suddenly we went from 30, 40 grand months to 100 grand months, and over 100,000 pound months. And it was like, whoa, just because everyone else got scared of the market, had to go get their jobs back, whatever it is. And it was a hard market, but we smashed through that, and now we've come out even bigger. The other thing aligned with that is we had our head of sales. It was a small team, but leave and go and work for a competitor. And it was all pretty shit, all pretty underhand, in my opinion, in the way it was dealt with. And I did have this whole, oh my God, like, what are we going to do now? Like, are we going to have to stop doing this and step back into this? And I won't lie, it's been bloody hard, and we're still dealing with it. But actually, it created this whole new problem for us to solve, in that person was great. And the guy was great. He's a great lad as well, to get it from where it was to when he left. But was he the right person to get it from there to there? Possibly not. I don't know for sure, but probably not. And so I had to step in a lot more, and it helped me learn some more of the inner workings of what my guys are going through, my girls are going through here. And so it helped me develop that understanding. And it's also forced us now, fast forwarded, to go, we need an operations manager now that's got 15 years experience in the property game, that can come in and look after the entire group from a day-to-day basis, so that all of my time can be spent on the high-level closing and training the sales team and the marketing team and stuff like that. And none of that perspective would have been made available if I didn't do that. So those were some really big things. Obviously, the education went online, and we actually created a completely new educational concept, where it was a blend of everything that I've learned over the last couple of years in terms of delivering training. So often in training, it's like a couple of grand for a weekend, and then say 10 grand for a mastermind, like actual support, right? Fairly standard. I think they are good value. But then what I did is blended the two concepts. It's like a blended learning process for closer to the 2 grand mark, like 2.5 grand. And it just exploded. I did it as a bit of a test, absolutely exploded it, gave loads of value, or as much value as I possibly could. And, that was as a new business last May. And I don't know the today gross figures, but we've done over 1 million in that time. And I just thought, wow, yeah. So I don't know if this is a book or I'm just saying it's a book. I'm sure I've read a book called The Problem is the Solution. But if it's not, then it's my quote, and you can put Jamie York at the end. But seriously, sometimes it is. The problem is often the solution, because it creates something new for us to look into.
Yeah, as long as your perception is on finding the solution, and it doesn't just stop you in your tracks, you've got to find a positive out of it, and quite often that can be the deal breaker.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Winners win and losers lose, and I'm not saying like, oh, you're a loser overall. It's just like, but this is when there's a big problem. And by the way, big wins as well. And you mentioned very briefly from the bio at the start. Originally, I was in trading. When there was a big win, and if there was a big loss, I'd pack up for the day and come back tomorrow. Because when you get those spike in emotions, you react emotionally. So what happened with the big winners in a trade, they'd lose their profit by the end of the day. And the people that lost big, they lose so much more, because you go, I'll just try and make it up with this. I'll try and make it up with this. Never happens, right? So the best thing you can do when there's a huge problem is genuinely sleep on it, because you've got your prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the way to think about it from your capability is, one is this small beaker, your prefrontal cortex, right? And it just fills up each day. And when you go to sleep, it tips out. And that's probably the best analogy for it. And then it's empty, and it's like, and often you must have had it where you wake up and you're like, I feel loads better. And I'm very clear on how I'm going to handle that. And almost all the time, if you try to handle something that's high emotion, you're going to make a dick of yourself. You're going to ruin something.
Because it's based on a pure reaction, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
that's
an emotional reaction.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So over the kind of the journey that you've had, I always ask people who inspires you. Who is it that you've perhaps had around you that has pushed you to new levels? Who do you kind of follow? This can be literary, it could be friends, colleagues, it could be people that you've been on training with, or business mentors. Who are the people that stand out for you?
Okay. Three things come into my head. So first of all, my mum, which is probably a bit of a weird one, because, my mum she worked for some of it. She was on the dole for some of bringing me up, but she was a single mum, 4 kids. My dad left her when I was 3 months old. And she's just a massive inspiration. She's kind of like the matriarch of my family. Like, everyone goes to my mum for just consoling, advice, just being around. And she's not academic in any way, but street smart is probably the way to define her. And she just has answers to things, and that always massively inspired me. And there's definitely a huge part of who I am. She's also incredibly good at managing money, and so there's stuff in my life where I definitely didn't manage money very well. A couple of lessons there, but I'm very good at managing money. And then, so it's taken, if you want to be rich, it's make, manage, and multiply, right? So I already knew managing money down to a T. And my dad was very good at making money, just shit at, he'd spend it all, right? So I kind of learned both, and really it was embracing those two, and then learning how to multiply was just the final stage of that puzzle. That's one thing. Another thing was a poem that my dad gave me for my 13th, actually. And it's a poem called If by Kipling. And it's like, if this, if that, if this, if that. And at the end it said, and if you can achieve all of this, my son, with a smile on your face, then that's when you can call yourself a man. And some really, because it was obviously such a sentimental gift, it really connects you to, what's possible. And actually what's important. Not Kipling decides what's important in everyone's life, but some real fundamentals where it connects you to. And it's like, do you know what? Like, getting upset about something so trivial as money or something like that, like, you're still sleeping in the same bed. You're probably still getting in the same car. You're going back to the same family that loves you. And so, is life that bad? Not really. The digit in your bank account's changed a little. Like, who really gives a fuck if it's -5 or +50? Easier to say for sure when you've got more money. I get that. Yeah. But that really connects you. And then the final person is a guy called Dean Graziosi. So he's a guy in America, and he does a lot with Tony Robbins now. But what I really like about him is, I watched him years and years and years ago. And I remember him saying, he was like, one day you're going to see me on stage with Tony Robbins. And I remember this, and Tony Robbins is like the godfather, right? And I remember thinking, like, I didn't like him at all. I was like, what a twat. And it was just maybe my mindset at the time. And I was just like, mate, you're never standing on stage. And I didn't say this to him. Like, I don't mean like that. I mean, like, I remember listening to him. He was like, yeah, I'm going to be on stage with Tony Robbins. Didn't know the guy at all. But he was so anchored to that. And again, my idea of Tony, I don't know if your listeners like him or not, but he's just like there, right? He's up there. He's a god. Like, that would be a dream, just to sort of feel his sweat hit me. If he spat on me, I'd never want. That's not that level. But I remember him saying this, And now he runs programs with him. And just thinking, how can you go from, and I don't know who it is in your field, but if you think about the absolute God in whatever given field, and you say, I'm going to be sharing a stage with that person. And in 10 years, you can see his journey of how he started as a delegate of Tony's at one of his Power to Achieve events. And then he sort of invested in working closer with them. And then he became a trainer for Tony. And then he stood out amongst them and he made every effort to be wherever he was. And suddenly he's on the stage with him. And I think like that sort of person just blows me away, that can look and see 10 years ahead.
Yeah.
And because really embracing that there's going to be so much external bullshit that goes on, but there's controllables and uncontrollables, right? And so you need to learn from the uncontrollables that are in your life, do what you can to overcome them, and control the controllables. And if you can do that, you realize that, bar a few really extreme situations in life, if you say, this is me 10 years from now, 10 years is a long time. That is a long time. What's that? 3,625 days, whatever it is. And it's like, that's a lot of days to get you somewhere. That is an incredible amount of time to achieve something. And as soon as you can fully embrace that and decide, actually, I am the writer of my story and your future is completely within your control. And that's what Dean Graciosi is for me. It completely connects it to me. So yeah, there's probably the three things top of my head.
They are awesome. So look, I want to send a massive thank you. It's a complete honor. I love talking to you, and I know you could talk for hours, and I could probably sit here listening for hours as well. But you wouldn't have the time for that anyway. So massive thank you. I always ask, so if there's one single piece of advice you'd leave listeners with, what is it that you would say?
Oh man, this is definitely one of those you probably gave it to me before and I should have prepared for it. If there's one piece of advice, okay, either give up quickly or never give up. And I'll give a bit more than that, so it's not just this line where you're like, what I mean by that is one of the biggest mistakes that I make, and you may have seen that sort of image of the person mining, and he gives up and he's 3 inches away from the diamond mine. And that's only part of the puzzle. The thing is, what if you're not on the right path? You can move really quickly, but what if it's in the wrong direction? And so it's kind of like getting in a taxi and going, go, get me there in 10 minutes. Well, get me where? Just go. Get me there in 10 minutes. And it's actually, you need to think strategically about the direction you're going in. Throw yourself 100% at it. And if it's not for you, if you don't love it, if you don't get excited by it, if you're not, life is too short for you to not be passionate and happy about what you're doing. Like, I promise you the money will come no matter what. So give up quickly. It's okay to fail. How do people find what they're great at? Usually by finding a load of things that they're shit at. How do people find something they're passionate about to find things they're not passionate about? And how do people succeed? By failing a lot of times and learning from them. So, give up quickly if it's not for you and reinvest your time into something new. It's okay to reinvent yourself, especially if you're younger, and younger being, I think, maybe younger than 50. I think reinvent yourself every couple of years if you need to, because we're getting older and older. If you're a true entrepreneur, you're going to be doing this till you're 80 anyway. 30 years is a fucking long time. I've only been doing this 10 years and a lot can happen in that time. So yeah, that's what I would say. Give up quickly or never give up.
Good stuff. Obviously, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you?
Depends really. So if you're interested in property investment, which most of your listeners may not be, but if you are, then YouTube, just Jamie York, trying to build a channel up there. So it'd be great to have some support on there. If you want to have a chat directly and just ask about anything, business, growth, mindset, then Instagram is probably best, which is Jamie York Aspire, Aspire. And then, chat to anyone that gets in touch with me.
Good stuff. Well, we'll put all the links, all your social media handles, in the comments anyway. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for spending some time with me.
No worries, man. It's been great. Thanks for having me.